So, hello and good evening everyone. I am Neeraj Atri, the Vice Student Coordinator of History Society, IIT Kanpur. And on behalf of the History Society team, I welcome you all to the second edition of the two-part talk series by Shri Neeraj Atri. So, for those who couldn't join us yesterday, Neeraj ji is an author, an educator, and an eloquent public speaker who is well known for his work on historical narratives and critiques of the Indian education system. Presently, he is the chairman of the National Center for Historical Research and Comparative Studies. He has recently authored a book titled Brainwashed Republic, India's Controlled Systemic Deracination, a book that argues that India's educational system has been systematically manipulated to misrepresent history. I request our faculty coordinator, Professor Jishnu Bhattacharya, our faculty advisor, Professor Arnab Bhattacharya, and our team members, Ashutosh, Harshit, Mukul, Devarto, Shora, Saurabh, whoever is present here, to come to the stage for an official group photo. Mahashivratri night, we have the privilege of hosting Shri Neeraj Atri for his second lecture here. In yesterday's session, to give somewhat of a context, he talked about rationality and religion, can they coexist? In which he delved into the definitions of religion and rationality and explained how they cannot coexist in a faith or belief-based system. In continuation to his argument, today he will first throw some light connecting dharma and rationality from the Sanatan perspective with a few examples. Thereafter, for today's second topic, titled A Scientific Look at History, he will explain the purpose of looking at history without bias and prejudice or a predetermined notion, thereby serving as a powerful tool to rebuild the society. History being a reservoir of the collective memory of a society or a nation, the speaker will make his case for taking lessons from it and the importance of studying undistorted history by eliminating ideological leanings. Please, I will request everyone to put their devices in silent mode for the talk. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause for Shri Atri ji for his talk.
Am I audible? This way? Is it on? No, this one. This one. Yeah. Am I audible? First of all, thanks Neeraj for this wonderful introduction. Once again, thanking Vishnuji, Arnabji, and the entire team of History Society for inviting me over here to interact with all of you. As he mentioned, we'll start from where we left yesterday. Yesterday we were talking about whether religion and rationality can coexist or not, and we tried to delve into this topic somewhat. Going forward, now what we did not specifically do yesterday was connecting whether dharma and religion coexist, dharma and rationality coexist. Unlike any religion, dharma has a much vaster connotation just as a word and its applied applications in our daily life. So, which aspects can be related to rationality and how relevant they are? Okay? So, one of the key principles of dharma is the karma siddhant or karma theory, which is known as. And most of you must be familiar with it. What it says is that this human life is just one of the windows for an Atma to undergo different cycles of birth and death. And after you die, because most of the people have this question and this query in their mind that what is going to happen once I die? Some people are scared of it. Most of the people are scared of it. So, what should be done? Or is there life after death or not? Now, Hindu Dharma or Sanatan Dharma is unambiguous about this, that there is a next life, and the quality of that next life depends on what you are doing, the kind of deeds you are performing in this present life. Now, the question is it rational? And can it be proven? Because if it has to stand the test of rationality, it has to be proven. So how do we prove it? One individual dies, another individual takes birth. Can we connect these two? Do we have a specific Aadhaar card that is telling you that this is the same person? Can you match the driving license? Obviously not. So this is a very tricky problem. How do you establish it? One is you go by, there is something known as Shabd Pramana. कि क्योंकि books में लिखा है. Somebody said that, and it is written in the books, you should trust it. Then that is not rationality. That is blind faith. That is believing something which somebody said, but it is neither your experience nor it is something which you can prove in a lab. Since we are talking in a scientific institute, how do we say something is established, something is rational? If it can be repeated, you should be able to see it. But how can you do it in case of punarjanam, in reincarnation? Can we do it in a lab? No. So, should we throw out the very idea that this cannot be proven? Yes or no?
No.
Why not? We can throw it out because we cannot prove it.
Perhaps we haven't found a way to prove it just yet.
Perhaps we haven't found a way to do it. Now, when somebody says that there is going to be a reincarnation or a punarjana, what can we do is we can just scoff that person off that this is all bullshit, you cannot prove it. And this is just ye Rudivadi hai, ya Sandhi hai, whatever you may call him or her. I had a very detailed discussion with a gentleman, Dr. Vivek Lal. In Chandigarh, we have Postgraduate Institute of Medical Education and Research, PGI. In North India, it is one of the most premium institutes. And this Dr. Vivek Lal is presently its director, head of Department of Neurology Department. He had a very peculiar case that came to him. There was this young child, about 6-7 years of age. He started saying that, he said to his parents, "You are not my parents, this is not my home is somewhere else, somewhere in Haryana, somewhere in UP," he said. He was in Haryana, he said it is in UP. So parents initially ignored him, since the age of 3. But then he persisted with it. They said, "Okay, we'll take you there." They rode a bus, reached that town, and the moment they reached that town, the child said that, "Okay, I'll take you to my home." And he took them to a home which he said that this is my home. And they reached there, an old man was sitting on a cot, and he said, "This is my dad." That gentleman was surprised that there is this young guy who is saying that he's my son. So they showed him photographs, the family photographs. He identified each and every individual. Then the father, this old man, he said that, "Okay, in this room there is something which is present, which you never parted with. Can you identify it?" He said, "Yes. The watch you are wearing, I never left it. This is my watch." Father was convinced. Then he went further. He said, "Just get up from the cot on which you are sitting." The old man got up. He removed the cot. Beneath that cot was underground hidden small compartment in which this person in his previous birth used to keep his gun. The gun was still there. He was retired from army in this previous birth. So this is just one example where he was saying this. Now, once you start criticizing this also, it can be an elaborate hoax. It can be a publicity stunt. We can just have a lot of doubts about this. Then I saw the second incident. It happened in Rampur of Uttar Pradesh. similar situation, a young child saying that this is not my home. My home is in this village in Rampur, and in my previous life I was killed by my brother, by my cousin. Again they took him there, and he identified the person who had shot him in his previous life. Both of them used to have a cart of pakoda or samosa, something of that sort, in the market. And this cousin had some petty fight with it. He took out his katta and fired. Now, again, similar kind of story, but how do you establish that this is a case of reincarnation? When he was shot in his previous life, since it was a murder case, there was a thorough postmortem done. The report was available. And this young boy had a wound mark on his chest as well on his back, entry wound and exit wound. And they exactly matched the postmortem report. So this is the closest we can go. We don't have an Aadhaar card, but we have something which is, we can say, conclusive evidence that this phenomenon exists. So this is one way in which we say that yes, there is rationality, there is some logic, and so rationality and dharma can coexist. This is just one aspect of the entire discussion. Apart from that, dharma does not rely on something written in one book. It's not that this is a book, whatever is written, you have to follow it. If it matches my daily life experience, then it can be a part of my life. But if it does not, then it is no good for me, whoever so might have said it. Right? Take an example. Now, there is this one very beautiful shlok. I'm a little biased in this case because I find Bhagavad Gita to be the best book. There is a shlok in it. Dhyayato Vishyanupulsa. Dhyayato means you pay attention to something. Dhyayato Vishyanupulsa. Sangas Tesho Prajayate. Sang is attraction. You get attracted towards it. Sangat Sajayate Kama. Once you get attracted, then Kam, a desire to own it or have it, appears. Kamat Krodho Vijayate. So now once desire comes, then after desire what comes? Anger. Why would anger come? How can we apply it in our daily life? This is something which we see on daily basis, on regular basis. When you are looking at an advertisement, it can be a toothpaste, it can be a motorbike. What they are doing is they are grabbing your attention with it. Dhyayato Vishyanupulsa. They grab your attention. Sangas Tesho Jayate. Now, a young man is looking at a bike and there is a desire to own it. You go to his dad, I need this bike. Shut up. You won't get it. Now there is anger. Krodhat. Then Krodhat Bhavati Sammoh. Once you become angry. Sammoh means now you are in a state of, for want of better word, I can say obsession or infatuation. Krodhat Bhavati Sammoh. Sammohat Smriti Vibhrama. Once you go into this state, Smriti Vibhrama, whatever you have been learning during your life, that I have to respect my parents, but now in anger, you start saying, maybe something of that sort, that he is coming in the path of my acquiring this particular object. Sangat Krodhat Bhakti Sammoha Sammohat Smriti Vibhrama Smriti Bhranshar Buddhi Nasha. That once your memory is destroyed, then your thinking pattern gets destroyed. And that leads to absolute destruction of the individual. Now this looks like an algorithm. If you draw a flow chart, it exactly happens, but when you look at an advertisement, it happens in a fraction of a second. So if something which is written in a scripture, which is written somewhere, not even in a scripture, if it is written and it matches your daily life experience, then we can accept it as rational, we can have it as a part of our life. Otherwise, it's of no use to us. So this is the portion which I maybe deliberately left yesterday. So this is what I have to say regarding this. I hope I've made my case. Before interacting with you, I will move on to today's topic, looking at history with a scientific approach. And fortunately for me, most of you must have been through your school life reading the books which are presently in the market, which are in currency today also. And the content that I have taken up is from those very books.
So may I ask you why you named yourself English there?
Sorry,
May I ask you why you named your username as English?
which name is English?
On your
No,
log screen.
username while
Yeah.
your username.
Why is it in English?
No, why is it English? It was exactly English.
Why is it?
It was in English, the username.
Got it. The username was in English. That is your question?
It was English.
It was the word English.
I didn't know.
I think we can move on.
You can move on.
We'll come to this. If time permits, we'll come to this.
Seems clear.
Okay. If time permits, I'll come to this question. Now, this is something which you must have read in your school books when you were studying history in your school. This is page 10 of class 7th. Just look at this. What is it saying? In 1318, the poet Amir Khusro noted that there was a different language in every region of this land. Sindhi, Lahori, Kashmiri, Dwar Samudri, Telangani, Gujri, Malabari, Gauri, Awadhi, and Hindvi. Right? This is something which Amir Khusro said about 700 years ago. This is a quote from his book, as you can see. Then the quote has been broken, and this is explanation by NCR. Amir Khusro went on to explain that in contrast to these languages, there was Sanskrit which did not belong to any region. It was an old language, and now within quotes is common people do not know it, only the Brahmins do. Right? Have you ever heard about somebody saying that India became India in 1947? Before this, different states, different rajas were fighting among each other. This is not a nation. There was no nation called India prior to 1947. I'm sure you must have heard this. And a very large section believes in it also. And this endorses it. Almost endorses it. What is it saying? A different language in every region of this land. They're not saying every region in India, in region of this land. So this is a land which has different languages. And Sanskrit does not belong to any region. It is a foreign language. Or by import, it can be said that it is not a language of any region of India. Does it make sense?
Sir, but in 1318 English was not there, it is written in English.
Okay, it is written in English. Originally it was written in Persian, but since we don't know Persian, that is why we have to speak English. So, there are 2 points over here. One is that there is a large group which says India originated in 1947. Second theory is that some foreigners invaded India from north. They were Aryans or Brahmins who came over here, occupied this land. And that is why this language does not belong anywhere. Now, when you see, the gentleman said that this is in English, there was no English at that time. It was written in Persian. When I tried to find out how true it is, I had to go through various sources. Then there is an 8-volume compendium which is known as History of India as told by its own historians. It has 8 volumes. It was compiled in somewhere 1840s, 1850s, about 175 years ago, by 2 British gentlemen called Eliot and Dawson. What they did was, whatever records, chronicles, memoirs had been written by different rulers during the medieval period, they got them translated from different languages. Some were in Arabic, some were in Persian, some were in Chagtai, some were in some other languages. So they got them translated into English. So I got hold of that book, and in that book, Amir Khusro's same content or same quotation is present. I will share it with you. Now, Amir Khusro was an offspring of a Muslim father and a Hindu mother. What he's saying is, this is very interesting for us. As I was born in Hind, I may be allowed to say a word respecting its languages. There is at this time in every province a language peculiar to itself and not borrowed from any other. Look at these two things. Every region of this land. What is he saying? Look at the red word. Hind. He is saying Hind. Then in every province. Now province always belongs to a much larger entity. So he was honest enough to tell us that he is talking about languages of Hind. So he was saying Hind is a country and it has different provinces. Then he moves on to say what they've said here. And then after saying this thing, he further says, these are all languages which from ancient times have been applied. He is again reinforcing the idea that these languages are not new, they have been utilized since long time. Then, why did they put a break over here and then put some portion of the code? They could have given the complete code in continuity. What is he saying? But there is another language more select than the others, which all the Brahmins use. Its name of old is Sanskrit. Look at the impact these two things can have. One is the original, one is what you have learned. Can you notice the difference? It is so stark. It can be understood. Now, why would someone do this? Before we answer this, now this was page number 10. On page 11, let us move to page 11. This is page 11. Look at this question. Do you remember what Amir Khusro had to say regarding Sanskrit, knowledge and Brahmins? And now start looking at this paragraph. It was during this period that important changes occurred in what we call Hinduism today. These included the worship of new deities, the construction of temples by royalty, and the growing importance of Brahmins, the priests, as dominant groups in society. If you had not read Amir Khusro, what he originally wrote, and you go by this narrative, and what we call Hinduism today, this is a very denigrating manner of writing something. That what we call Hinduism today, that means Hinduism is something new which has been created out of something. So probably there is some conspiracy theory over here. And then these included worship of new deities. So since Brahmanas were coming, they were bringing new deities with them, and their growing importance, construction of temples by the royalty. जो royal लोग थे, they were helping Brahmins. Growing importance of Brahmins, the priests as dominant groups in society. When you listen to this word dominate, what connotation does it present? Positive or negative? Negative. This is what is being taught to our children. And now come to this question. Do you remember what Amir Khusro had to say regarding Sanskrit, knowledge and Brahmins? The child has just read it on page number 10, now he's on page number 11. This is a tried and tested propaganda technique. In this, what is done is, the target is given some information. And then a question is asked to reward the target. Since the information is fresh in his mind, he is going to reply whatever he or she was told. Right? And once he gives that reply, he will be reinforced positively by the teacher. Very good, you got it. And once this is done, the child takes the ownership of the idea. And this is known as brainwashing. There was, I hope I have conveyed what I was trying to say. There was this very interesting movie about 25 years ago. It was a spoof on the games that media plays on daily basis. In that movie, there was a scene that a person is caught committing a murder, and the murder catches national headlines. It becomes a national issue, and then media guys decide that let us give a live telecast of his execution. That was a movie, exaggeration thousand, but to give it a to show the depravity of media in a funny manner, they said that there will be a live telecast of execution of this murder. And in that there was this particular scene that the TV anchor is going, she goes to the person who is going to execute her, the Jalad. So Jalad is standing over there, and she goes to him, okay, how are you feeling about it? The standard question that media asks. And he says, I'm feeling very proud of this. Chanda, tum kaisi ho, main kaisa lag raha hu? तो वो पूछती है who is चंदा कौन है? मेरी बीवी. So now she says आज का क्विज मोहनलाल की बीवी का नाम क्या? जो ये बताएगा वो जीतेगा बम्पर इनाम. Right? So why I brought this up is that this is a typical propaganda technique which we see on daily basis everywhere, but applying it on unsuspecting kids is downright cruel, and this is what has been happening with us. Okay. Same 7th class book. New and old terminologies. Let us read this paragraph. Take the term Hindustan, for example. Today we understand it as India, the modern nation state. When the term was used in the 13th century by Neeraj Atri, a chronicler who wrote in Persian, he meant the areas of Punjab, Haryana and the lands between the Ganga and Yamuna. He used the term in a political sense for lands that were a part of the dominions of the Delhi Sultan. The areas included in this term shifted with the extent of Sultanate, but the term never included South India within it. By contrast, in the early 16th century, Babur used Hindustan to describe the geography, the fauna and the culture of the inhabitants of the subcontinent. You can just read the last portion which is highlighted. The term Hindustan did not carry the political and national meanings which we associate with it today. What is going to be the take home of a student reading this? 12-year-old kid. South India was not a part of India. Aryan Dravidian divide, North-South divide. This is absolute politics which is being played through books. If it is actually true, let us accept it. But is it? So, when we are talking of scientific learning history, my suggestion is always rely on the primary sources. What do the primary sources say? So here is this one extract. It was written by Al-Biruni. Who was Al-Biruni?
Was a traveler who did accounts on Indian.
About 1000 years ago, when Mahmud Ghaznavi invaded, Al-Biruni came along with him. He was his chronicler in a sense. And he stayed here about 12-13 years, interacted with the local population, and he wrote a book which is known as Kitab al-Hind.
But sir, I have also read that he never came to India.
He
Never came to our northern part.
never came to
He stayed mostly in the Afghanistan and the current Peshawar area. He never came to our Punjab and Haryana area.
Okay, let us have a look at it. Now this is how he is describing India 1000 years ago. You can read it if you want, but the important part I have already highlighted here. One of these plains is India, limited in the south by the above mentioned Indian Ocean, and on all three other sides by the lofty mountains, the waters of which flow down to it. Very unambiguous. Whether he came to India, we can leave this for a debate, or did not come. If we leave it aside, this is what somebody is saying about India. So he could not have been a Sanghi, right? Your son did not exist. He could not even have been a Hindu nationalist also, because he is a Muslim. This is what he is talking about. And this is how world saw India 1000 years ago. But today, we are being taught that India was not a nation. Then what does he continue as? The southern frontier of India is formed by the Southern Ocean. No doubt, no confusion at all. Now, pause for a few seconds and think about it. What is the purpose of writing history? What is the purpose of teaching history to students? Since I've been a teacher, I've been into very large number of student education programs. We used to get students from different parts. Our students traveled and we interacted with both the parties. I noted something very stark. I talked to an American student about America. He's very confident. Talked to a Japanese. Very confident, very proud of being a Japanese. Talked to a French. Very proud of being a French. What about India? How many of you have found pride in being an Indian?
Only of
Of late. Cut back 10 years ago. I used to see the body language of our students. I'll give you one example. This very brilliant girl, she went to Japan during this program, and then those Japanese students came over here. And I asked her that, what did you find negative about Japanese? And she said, sir, I found that they are somewhat backward because they don't know English. Try to imagine. She's talking about the most advanced nation. Which projector are we using? Japanese. The cars that we use. Look at everywhere. Japanese are everywhere. Just a tiny nation. They're everywhere. Dominant in tech. And our brightest mind goes over there. She had got All India 6th rank in this PMT exam. And she is saying they are backward because they don't know English. This is how colonized we have been. And when now there is a change, there is a sea change now among students, their body language. But I used to see, it looked like that our students don't have a spinal cord to stand. Yes, we have corruption, we have pollution, I agree with all this. We have everything bad, but nothing good. And this is the source. When history is taught, now if I take the example of Americans, 500 years ago, when Europeans went over there and colonized America, they brutally killed the native population by millions, right? And still they are proud of being Americans. They should have been ashamed of being part of that lineage who did this. Of course, they should not be held guilty. The today's generation should not be held guilty, but if they read that history, they are taught that history, they should have that guilt. That is never reflected because they are not taught that history, that part of the history. A country like Pakistan, you know what they teach them? We have 5,000 years old history. A country which came into existence by killing and raping millions of their own ancestors. They are taught you should be proud of being a Pakistani. In that sense, our textbooks are an exception because they rob our students of their self-confidence. The only set of textbooks in the world. Now, do we have time?
Yeah, we have some time.
Yeah. Okay. Why would someone do this? That should be the question. It's like whenever you are talking about a mystery or a crime, I find this as a crime which is being committed on students, unsuspecting students, 12, 13, 14 years of age. If there is a crime, then there has to be a reason for it. right? Before labeling it as a crime, we can note out one more thing. It can be an error also. Human error can also be there, right? In physics, when we read about errors, what is the solution of minimizing the error? Does anyone remember physics class? Sorry?
Repetition.
Yeah, you take a very large number of calculations and then average them out. Because error by its very nature can either be negative or positive. So if you have taken a very large number of calculations, the negative and positive will cancel out each other and you will approach closest to the true value. Right? Then once what happened was Sachin was batting and he was erroneously given LBW out by the umpire. So being a thorough gentleman, Sachin started walking to the pavilion. Gavaskar was sitting in the commentary box. He appreciated Sachin's this gesture and then he said something very remarkable. He said that if you have a considerably long career as a batsman, don't dissent to an umpire's decision because sometimes that decision might go in your favor and sometimes it will go against you, and over a long career it will balance out. That is what happens. But in these sports, all the errors are in a particular direction. That should tell you that these are not errors, it is by design, it has been done by design. So if there is a crime which is being committed, there has to be some reason for it. Right? What can it be?
Keep us colonized.
The biasness of those who wrote it.
The bias of those who wrote it. But we are talking of NCRT as an institution. An institution does not depend on the whims and fancies of one individual. It is a collective effort. I filed more than 100 RTA applications regarding this content to NCERT. I demanded, give us the original translation from which you picked it up, the original language in which it was written, and who had vetted this process. You know the answer that I got? The department does not have any records. Right? So that tells you that there is some problem. Identity and disidentity. Identity तो हम सब सुनते हैं. Ever heard about this term disidentity? No. This was coined about 25 years ago. In 1994, in Rwanda, there was a genocide. Heard about it? How many people died? The official figure is 800,000, 8 lakh, in 4 months. Now try to imagine a small country like Rwanda, 800,000 people killed within a span of 4 months. Massive scale, industrial scale genocide. When this happened, the world started looking at it, that why would it happen? Then researchers started acting on it, that how is it possible that one section of a society becomes so violent against another section of the society? What they found out was that the students in Rwanda had been systematically fed a history which was biased, which was not based on facts, which was based on prejudices, and in which two societies were being pitted against each other, that these two have been enemies of each other. Now, if you keep on teaching this for a prolonged period of time, if they are 50-50, the two communities are 50-50, then the balance might remain maintained. But then what happened was, one community was 20%, the other was 80%. That 20% community was being portrayed as the aggressor, as clever, as wily, as wicked, and as invader. That they invaded your country, they came from north, they were of a brighter skin color, they were lighter in skin color, they invaded, they captured, they dominated, and then they created a system to keep you in perpetual domination and oppression. Does it sound familiar? It should, and it should ring alarm bells. Because what happened with Rwanda was they were successively colonized by Belgians and Germans. This kind of history was fed into them, and when the so-called independence of Rwanda came, the history remained a prisoner to the colonial narrative, and that was further pushed. And then one day it has to explode. That explosion happened in 1994 in Rwanda. And this is exactly what is happening in our country. They are planning that kind of genocide. Look at the template, same template. Don't have to change it. Brahman, the upper caste invaded from north. They created a system, this tortured, dominated, subjugated and oppressed the other classes. And now there has to be jitni abadi. So na? This is what they are doing. So in that context, this disidentity term was created. The name of the researcher was John Guazenabo. You can read about him. He said that there were two elements in the historiography, in the history which was being taught, that they were given a very strong group identity. And as a counterfoil, a villain was being created that was being dehumanized, and his identity was being robbed, that was known as disidentity. So once you get that critical mass of such individuals, they will pick up arms, they will start murdering, and that is what happened over there. And this is a process which was initiated in 2006. Although earlier books were also very toxic, but this particular set of books came into existence in 2007, and still they are in currency. All of you must have grown with the idea that caste discrimination is rampant in this society. Women oppression is rampant in this society. Am I right? You may not agree with it, but the dominant narrative has remained this. And that is coming from these textbooks. One of the sources is textbooks, and this is the most powerful medium through which it can be done. Heard of Sati Pratha? Sabne suna? What is the meaning of Pratha?
Custom.
Custom or tradition. That means it has a long history of continuity. Right? All of us have seen Ramayana and Ramlila. When Dashrath died, how many of his wives were alive at that time? 3. And how many of them became Sati? None. Had it been a Pratha, Ramayana is the most popular epic. You would have seen it there. Did we? All the characters in Ramayana, there are so many deaths taking place in this epic. Not one instance of some woman committing sati. Come to Mahabharat. Kunti was a widow. Satyavati was a widow. Which one of them committed sati? None of them. Madri did. So, the mere fact that one character is doing out of so many proves that it is an exception, not a rule. But the narrative is pick up one exception and push it so much that that becomes as the dominant narrative. There was a discussion going on. In those days, I was not very familiar with whether Sati Pratha used to take place or not. Somebody said, "Yaar, Sati Pratha was rampant. In Ramayana, there is one character. Have you heard about a character committing sati in Ramayana? No. The wife of Kumbhakarna committed sati. Right? So, they said Kumbhakarna ki wife ne to sati kiya tha. And I was taken aback. Then I started studying about this. How many different types of Ramayana are in currency in our country? More than 350. More than 300. More than 300 at least. More than 300. Out of those 350, there is only one version of Ramayana in which Kumbhakarna's wife is committing sati. Not in others.
That is also voluntary, not involuntary. So
That is-
the sati main point is voluntary versus forcing somebody to do
We'll
it.
come to, even if we forget that, even if we don't talk about the voluntary nature of it, out of 350, there is in one Ramayana where it is mentioned, so it is a rarest exception. And yet, they will confront you with, देखो उसने भी तो किया. That is what I am trying to stress. That is how narrative is built. So here, caste and social reform. There were also others who questioned the injustices of the caste social order during the course of 19th century. Christian missionaries began setting up schools for tribal groups and lower caste children. These children were thus equipped with some resources to make their way into a changing world. Try to visualize a 13-year-old child reading this in his classroom. If he is from this so-called lower caste, what will he feel?
Should be already seen.
Yes. This is what is being done at industrial scale. And what happened in Rwanda is being planned over here for decades. What I'll do is I'll stop here and see what we as sentient beings, as conscious individuals, should be worried about is, can it lead to a genocide? If it already has, why not now? And if you look at the kind of statements now in the era of social media, you can see many people spewing venom just in the name of caste injustice. The beauty of all this is what, if I am a Dalit, I am from some lower caste and I have been fed this kind of narrative. It becomes very easy for me to have that heightened sense of victimhood. And becoming victim is the easiest thing to do. It tells you that I may be very smart, I may be very dumb. If I am dumb, I can say that I am in this pity state not because of me, but because of what was done to the grandfather of my grandfather, my grandfather of your grandfather, 200 years ago. So that is an escape mechanism that I am good and the world owes me something. This is a very dangerous mentality. So something which is obviously belongs to somebody else, I will be eyeing it and I will be putting my claim just because I have got that identity. That is the problem with this identity politics. It lays more emphasis on your group identity than the qualities which you possess as an individual, and this is a very bad idea. Unfortunately, that is what is being peddled. So, I would request that when you read history, either don't believe it, and if you have to believe it, go by the primary sources, and also keep in mind that what kind of fissiparous or separatist tendencies it might be feeding to us. I'll just give one example. For 1,000 years, it is said for 1,000 years, Muslims were ruling this country. They have one book which says that they are non-Muslims, they can be killed, they can be murdered, they can be raped, etc., etc. And this is what went on for a very long time. But can we blame today's Muslims for that?
No, of course not.
We should not. No. So likewise, if some caste atrocity was perpetrated on somebody, can we ask the present generation to suffer for that? By the same principle? No. Right? So, the laws of the principles of social justice should be applied uniformly. we can go in for questions because the presentation is so long. I can go on for 2 more hours. Yes.
Just wait a second.